Hey guys, I'm back today to record another mini lesson for you. It's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day to everybody. It's also your first win cycle of the year of 2018. We haven't had one since we got back. So I hope everything went well this morning. I'm excited to hear all about it tomorrow. You should have already completed your bell ringer for today. And since it is a Win Wednesday and we only have 60 minutes, we're going to skip reading for today to give you as much time as possible to complete chapter 1 of your companion book since it's due tomorrow. Remember, if you are going on the Challenger field trip tomorrow, you need to either share your project with me digitally or you need to bring it in and drop it off before school tomorrow because it is due tomorrow. And I will be emailing home to anybody who I do not receive their project from tomorrow. So today's mini lesson is about voice. Make sure you have your writer's notebook out and you're taking notes. Title this voice, of course. And we're really wondering, what is voice? Well, voice is the tone the author takes. It's his or her word choice. It's how the personality of the author comes across. So write down your definition of voice as word choice, personality of author, and there's really a difference in voice between fiction and nonfiction. So you're going to want to write this slide down as I talk about it. If you need to, remember you can always pause the video so you can get everything down. So in fiction writing, voice plays a role in how writers step into their characters' shoes, meaning normally the voice of your author in fiction is actually coming across as one of the characters. So if your main character is the narrator in the story, then the author's voice is going to be essentially that character's voice. And so the author is very deliberate in the words he chooses and the attitude he takes as he's writing to make sure the reader receives more characteristics. Now, in nonfiction writing, your voice is how your writer conveys his or her opinions with his or her own personality and style. They look at with voice. In nonfiction authors really want to look at their audience too. If we look at the voice in nonfiction, we can see maybe some of the bias that comes out. So today for practice in voice, we are actually going to watch a bit of a very famous speech from Martin Luther King Jr., and it is his I Have a Dream speech. Now I'm going to fast forward. His speech is very long, and so I'm going to fast forward and we're just going to watch a couple bits of it. And as we're watching, I want you to record anything that's standing out to you that's coming across as his voice.
Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity.
So as you were listening, you may notice that Martin Luther King Jr. had a few moments of metaphors that he put in there. So he talked about the chains of slavery. Remember, slavery had literal chains, but they also had figurative chains. So he was referring to that too. He also used a lot of repetition in saying 100 years ago.
Rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and straight into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people.
So you may have noticed through that section, which is, he talks a lot about we. He uses the words we to include everyone in it. And the we won't be satisfied. It's a very famous part of the speech. Now, probably the part that you're waiting to hear is the I have a dream section. And thinking about with the I have a dream section, there's a lot of repetition in there. And there's a lot of emphasis that he makes on certain words. He has long pauses. He's thinking about his audience and appealing to his audience.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
Another part of his voice is the fact that he knows how to be critical. He knows how to look at the negative side, like the bad things that are happening, but also find a way to be positive about it so that he keeps the positivity up in the crowd and he's paying attention to his audience. That's really important when it comes to voice. So remember, when you're writing your 3 chapters, make sure your voice comes across. And you should be writing this slide down also. Your voice should feel authentic. It should feel like you. It should feel original, but make sure you still match your purpose. So if your purpose is to persuade, picking those persuasive words, using that absolute or extreme language. Remember, it comes down to word choice, which we learned about yesterday. It comes down to knowing your audience, figuring out how you can connect to them, knowing your purpose, which we've talked about a lot already with your graphic organizer, and the tone, the passion that you have for this subject. So today, continue working on your Chapter 1 artistic chapter of your companion book. It is due tomorrow. Don't forget to complete your exit ticket so that I know where you're at and you know what you need to do tonight. And I will see some of you tomorrow. If I don't get to see you tomorrow, have a fabulous long weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.